Have you ever dreamed of growing your own salad greens but don't have the space for a traditional garden? Or maybe you, like myself, do have the space but not the green thumb to cultivate a thriving plot of vegetables. Over the years, I have tried my hand at various types of gardening to different degrees of success and plenty of failure too. I just tend to do better growing herbs and flowers rather than vegetables. Still, I wasn't ready to give up completely and eventually came upon a system that works for me and yields substantial results: growing microgreens. You don't need a ton of space to grow some of your own food. I've been growing microgreens in a small space for years, and I'm very happy with how things are turning out. In this video, I will explain my method for growing baby mustard greens, radish, beet greens, and more. Welcome to my Microgreens Garden. Well, it isn't so much a garden as a wooden structure that I have covered with shade cloth to fit my needs. Here, I plant seeds, water, and harvest pretty much daily. It is conveniently located only steps away from the kitchen. In a typical garden, salad greens are picked when the leaf is mature. Microgreens, however, are trimmed off when the plant is only a few weeks old, and in some cases even sooner. This means that microgreens can be harvested much more quickly, but also require much more seeds. Luckily, as microgreens grow in popularity, there are more and more online stores where a variety of seeds can be purchased. I like to grow a few different types of greens as weather permits. In winter, I mostly grow lettuce and arugula. Now that it is spring and frost is still a possibility, I'm growing cold-tolerant plants like radish and baby broccoli. Some of these seeds I buy online, others I buy in bulk food stores. I will discuss seeds more in detail in just a little bit. Before we talk more about seeds and planting, I want to explain how to choose a good spot for the microgreens to grow. An ideal location is a protected area outdoors or in a sunny window. If you already have a greenhouse, that's great, go with that. I picked a spot that gets several hours of morning sun year-round and is under a tree, so it's protected from the most intense hail that we sometimes get in summer. Birds absolutely love to tear up trays of microgreens and devour the young plants, and if you live in an area with squirrels, they will probably do the same. An extra layer of protection like shade cloth or anti-freeze fabric can greatly help with all of these issues. All plants need sunlight to grow. Be sure that the area gets around 4 hours of sunlight or more, but not so much that the plants will wither away under the intense rays. Another important factor is that the microgreens area is really close by the house. Microgreens grow in shallow trays or pots, so the roots can dry out really quickly and need watering every day or every other day. There are so many ways to go about growing microgreens. This is my way, so you can take any piece of advice you like and leave what doesn't work for you. Let's start with the containers. I own 2 official microgreen trays. They're great. I also have a few shallow ceramic pots, which are also nice, but those just aren't enough to keep us fed. And so I have made more trays using recycled water bottles. Using a box cutter, I very carefully cut these bottles in half along the length of the bottle. Really, please be careful doing this, especially when cutting through the thicker plastic around the cap and the bottom of the bottle. Lastly, I poked many holes at the base of the tray. Online, I have seen people grow microgreens in trays without drainage, but this just doesn't work for me. Plants need drainage, especially when they might get rained on. I use these trays time and time again, rinsing them off between uses. As for the seeds, there are a lot of different options. I am from the United States and go there often, though I actually live most of the time in Argentina. Here in Argentina, I buy from one of the only microgreens companies in the country that I know of called Tohu Greens. And in the United States, there are dozens of options. I really like Silver Lake Seed Co., both of which I will link in the description in case you're interested. Now, I have a few trays that are ready to be planted. First, I fill the trays about 3/4 of the way with compost with a little sand mixed in. You can also use potting soil. Then I chose my greens. I want to have different greens each day, so I chose radish greens, which are my favorite, broccoli, and spicy salad mix. Then I took a little break to give Tila a carrot. Back at my table, I sprinkle seeds very densely on top of the soil. The goal is to have a lot of baby plants all growing close together. With time, you will get the hang of how many seeds to plant per tray. Too many seeds tends to lead to mold. Here is a closer view to show just how densely I planted these radish seeds. This next step is where different gardeners will have unique opinions. I like to sprinkle a very thin layer of compost on top of the seeds. Other people leave them without this final layer and instead cover the trays with some sort of cloth or other trays to block out the light for the first few days. Then I put the trays back into the microgreens area and water them in really well. It is important to water them carefully because the soil and the seeds are loose and can move around. Sometimes I use a regular pitcher from the kitchen, but the ideal way to water greens is with a spray bottle of some kind. This can be found in gardening stores and are often used to apply foliar feeds or fertilizers. I only use this for watering plants, and so it has only ever contained water. Depending on the climate, microgreens might need to be watered daily in very dry places or every other day in humid climates. I water every 2 to 3 days unless it's raining. Maybe you are thinking, this is great, but I don't have a ton of money to drop on seeds. And I hear you. When I first started out growing greens, I used mostly seeds that I bought in bulk and still do. My favorite is mustard, which is very common in bulk food stores in the condiment section and is very cheap. The process is exactly the same as the other greens, and like radishes, mustard tends to germinate really quickly, even in winter. Another condiment that can be grown as greens is fenugreek, and a lot of people like to grow sunflower seeds this way too. Just be sure to buy raw and unsalted sunflower seeds with the shell still on. You could also give pumpkin seeds from the inside of a fresh pumpkin a go as well. All of these greens should be lightly steamed before consuming. So, that brings me to how I actually use these greens in meals. There are people who say that all baby greens can and should be eaten raw. I say that this depends on your personal preference. As for me, there are some greens I eat in small quantities, raw, and others that I like to steam, like sunflower, lentil, and pumpkin greens. Here are a few ways that I incorporate microgreens into daily meals and snacks. I'm not a great cook or anything, but I like to eat as healthy as I can. Adding a sprinkling of greens to cheese and crackers adds extra nutrition and color to an otherwise pale meal. I use these baby broccoli greens like nutrient-packed sprinkles to give interest to an otherwise boring plate of vegetables, like this steamed pumpkin left over from a previous meal, and add a bit of condiments on top too. Microgreens, especially mustard greens, are very good lightly steamed in omelets or added on top of a pizza when it is just out of the oven. By far, the people's favorite is using microgreens in pasta salad, either using leftover pasta or recently cooked pasta that has been left to cool. I add fresh herbs from the garden like mint, rosemary, oregano, and sage, which I chop up finely. Then I layer herbs with the pasta, olive oil, microgreens, and a little bit of that leftover pumpkin that I mentioned before. Other additions could be soy sauce, olives, and cheese. Well, that is all the information I have to impart concerning the world of microgreens. I really hope you have enjoyed this video and consider giving this method a try. I wish you luck and, as always, happy crafting!